Anand Chandran, the publisher of StormAsia.com, and this is a web chat, a series of regular discussions where we talk about all kinds of things. Today's session is about launching a new product or a brand or a service. A lot of people are looking to do things on their own. I think given what's going on in this world, the uncertainties, AI taking over lots of jobs. So it's good then to consider your options. Now, do you want to start something? What do you have to do? How should you go about doing it? It is estimated that there are 30,000 plus new consumer products launched globally across all categories in a year, right? So that's quite a lot of stuff that's coming out. But 95% of new products fail commercially. There's a lot of energy spent to watch something fall, and you don't want it to fall, you want it to fly, right? So we'll talk to our panelists in a while, and we will find out what has helped them make things fly and what are the tools that they have in place which can also give us an idea of how we can help our own projects fly, right? Ma, who's the CEO of Riff Sound, is a global licensee of Fender Audio. Those of us who appreciate music, like guitarists, would know the brand Fender. When Fender exited the consumer electronics audio category, Chen Wei was given the opportunity to become a licensee. Dr. Cody Kato is a founder of Office for Design Evolution, ODE, and he's also the creator of Kaira, a natural material to replace concrete. Cody was born in Hawaii and is now based in Singapore. The company embodies a philosophy of sustainable architecture through a design approach called creative engineering. Cody received a Doctor of Architecture degree in performance-oriented design with a focus on structural engineering and mathematical biology. Mark Laudy is a managing partner of Pitchmark. Mark is an accomplished media mentor, business conference anchor, and radio and financial television current affairs show host. His experience spans traditional and new media, and he's a communications coach to senior business and government leaders in Asia. He launched Pitchmark to help creatives protect their intellectual property when pitching for projects, and he has since enhanced the offering. Welcome, everybody, and I'd like to start off by asking you, what would you say are the current challenges you face when you are launching a project or a product?
Well, kind of Nassim, I guess everyone here on the panel knows making anything or manufacturing anything is almost a realm for masochists because everything that can go wrong generally will. And you just have to be prepared for, I don't think you can even prepare for that, honestly. Eh, I suppose the idea is really being able to fall forward, where sometimes your mistakes or things which just don't pan out the way you intended it to, still end up contributing to the overall product, yeah, or the final thing that you launch anyway. So being flexible, being able to have a vision in mind, being able to just know when to pivot, to me is one of those things which is important in getting anything done, really, especially so for launching and manufacturing products. Otherwise, if you're focused on a very specific thing and you say, no, it must be this way, it must be, but, and then you might end up, burning through your cash a lot faster and not being able to get that to market before you run out of cash. So that's really what I've learned in the past couple of months.
How do you sort of look at making your product different or making it stand out against the competition?
As you mentioned, the field is really, really competitive. There's a lot of competition, lots of other products out there, lots of other brands out there. And anyone who's trying to get into CE generally with a new brand is tough. It's really, really, really tough. Fortunately for us, we do have a leg up in terms of being able to license the Fender brand. And that instantly gives us some form of recognition, or at least the very least, a foot in the door where people will be willing to talk to us just because we carry the brand name Fender, right? And from there, being able to tie the brand, what it means uh, currently, what it means before, legacy, and what it means going forward is really important to build that story into the product that we're making because you want to bring value not only to the brand, but also to the consumers buying the brand who may not necessarily have that same uh, knowledge of the brand and where it's come from. So one thing that I quickly come to realize in doing this is you have a lot of people within industry, right, who say Fender, you can't fail. You know, Fender is the biggest brand in the room. How can anyone not know this brand? Uh, but the world is a big place, market's a big place, and I found that in the past 10 years, when working for Fender and with Fender, engaging with anyone who's under 42 years of age. I keep having to push this up every year. It used to be 40, now it's 41 and 42. So anyone younger than 42 and who doesn't play guitar, there's a high chance they don't know the brand, right? And a funny story was when we were having dinner in Vegas, and I was just telling some of the people I was with that, Fender is fantastic, but not everyone knows it, and they were just could not believe me. Like, how we are in the US, how can you not know Fender, right? It's like not knowing Coca-Cola. Like, let me just test this theory, and we asked two of the waiters who were serving us, and we said, hey, like we showed them the brand even because we had our speakers with us. Do you recognize this brand? Like, nope. Okay. Well, there you go. Case in point. How old are you? Younger than 40, for sure. Yes, there. So it's fascinating when we, from our domain of expertise, think we know everything, and then the moment you test those assumptions, it quickly falls apart, right? And then that's also one of those important things where we always need to test our assumptions.
Yeah, it's a reality check, isn't it? That's important. Um, okay, Cody, for you, you're launching a totally new product. What was it for you, creating something like Kaira, and knowing that you are going to pitch it as a totally new thing to a market that's already quite entrenched in existing materials?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think to answer that, let me just take you back to a moment that kind of changed everything for me. It was in 2009, and I submitted a project called Liberated Memories to an international competition and won. That project used structural load-bearing columns like you would find in any building that you ever walk into. But there was one difference. They were made entirely out of earth, materials that most people would actually consider it as waste byproducts. So the thing is that it worked. I mean, it took us 10 years. It didn't work immediately, and hundreds of iterations after it worked, right? And the question that was driving everything that we do is quite deceptively simple. What if we stopped taking from Earth's natural resources? I mean, completely. And the timing couldn't matter more, right? The built environment now is responsible for about 35 to 40% of all CO2 emissions. And the pressure on the developers and the builders to respond is no longer coming from activists, right? It's coming from regulators and buyers. Singapore alone is facing projected carbon tax of 80 Singapore dollars per ton by 2030. We're looking at about $423 billion market, and the businesses that are paying attention are actively looking for something that's actually either an exit or a solution to their companies. So Kaira is that answer. And, we're not actually competing with the cement manufacturing companies. We are actually partnering with a lot of these, not only cement manufacturing companies, but other companies as well. Because I think that this is more of an industry problem. It's not a, a competition. We have a major issue on our hands, and Kaira's part of that solution because everything that comes Everything that's made in Kaera comes from diverted upstream waste and abundant mineral byproducts. We don't use any high temperature processing. We use renewables that power our equipment. And we've been working together for a very long time with third-party companies that confirms our material sequesters 87 kgs of CO2 per cubic meter. So, we're actually very excited about this opportunity. And aside from the numbers, the immediate client buy-in that we get is really fulfilling for us, because the moment that they see, touch, and feel Kaera, we have a pretty high percentage of immediate buy-in.
All those numbers, could you make sense of it to the layperson, as in how would they feel the effect of those numbers? Because I understand Kaira absorbs the carbon dioxide, right, from the atmosphere.
So for example, if you just look at the carbon factor for something like a traditional material, it's probably about 1 kg of CO2 released per kilogram of material. We're a net negative 0.05. So if you look at the carbon factor, that for us was always the icing on the cake. But because what we're really trying to do is really transform the way that we source, handle, and process materials from the very, very beginning. We started looking at a few particles of recycled excavated earth, and that's how we started. So in comparison to traditional materials weight, for example, we're at 30 to 40% lighter. And in terms of the operations of the building, if you look at the thermal resistance of our material compared to alternatives, we're at about 40% more efficient as well. And that's because of the inherent materials that go into the product from the very beginning, from the source.
Let's move to Mark, who's got a wonderful view of the CBD behind him. Tell us a bit about PitchMark and why you thought it was important when you launched it and what you've done for it.
Great to talk to you guys as well. Well, in essence, the environment for launching new products has obviously gotten ever more complex. I don't need to tell you that. You want to advertise a product, so many channels. It used to be that you just advertised on a few channels. People got to know about your product. But in addition to all of the complexity around marketing, there's also the complexity around the pre-marketing. When you're going to pitch a product, like we heard from both of you already, Chawei and Cody, you're pitching a product possibly to investors, possibly to prospective customers. You've pitched it through a competition. One of the other things that's sped up is the propensity for people to take your ideas. So PitchMark has been around for some time to allow your prospects and customers to get the idea, but not take it. And so what we've done most recently is added 3 things. First is smart contracts. So now when you've pitch-marked your idea, it is actually on the blockchain. And with the launch of Ideas Exchange, you're now able to license or even sell your idea in the moment. For example, if you are pitching your idea to a prospective partner, supplier, investor, traditionally they don't sign non-disclosure agreements. So now you're able to, firstly, deter idea theft. Second, formalize those conversations that otherwise don't have. And third, actually generate licensing revenue so that you get paid much faster for your ideas. Let's say, for example, you're an architect. Let's say you have somebody come to you and say, hey, we want you to, add a part of our building or maybe stock up on our existing single floor building. You get to work, you come up with some ideas, some designs, you show your portfolio to the prospective client. And how often does this happen, that the client then says, thanks for these ideas, but we've decided to go into a different direction. 9 months later, you drive past and you see your ideas there. And so that's in essence where PitchMark plays. First, during those initial conversations with the prospect, you formalize those conversations, you demonstrate that you have pitch-marked your ideas. And then, in the hopeful event that the client does like the idea, you can put a licensing agreement on the blockchain, a smart contract in front of them straight away. You've tokenized your idea. And we've moved the conversation away from an IP conversation into a contractual conversation. So I'm happy to elaborate on these points, but broadly, in a world where ideas travel just as fast as marketing messages, where there are people who just can't wait to take your idea and be able to execute it much cheaper than you, safeguarding your IP has really become an essential ingredient for anybody launching a product.
What percentage of businesses out there would actually protect their ideas in this way, you reckon?
Well, this is exactly the right question, because it is just so hard to protect, using the P word, protect. There is simply no law that will make it watertight for you. If you can get a patent on your earth-built bricks, do it. If you can trademark your Fender guitars, do it. But in truth, when you're pitching an idea, you're armed with a PowerPoint deck, you trundle off to the customer, supplier, partner, investor, you're not going to patent or trademark your PowerPoint deck. So what else is left? Copyright? But then again, people take the essence of your idea, and before long you see it executed without your input. So there is simply no protection, watertight protection that you might think. All that we're really left with is deterrence. How do we influence the receiving party to not rip off the ideas? And now you want to throw everything that you have at it. You want to have a pitch mark certificate. You want to have a conversation about IP rights that usually never gets had. And most importantly, you want to put the customer in a buying position where it is no longer an IP conversation, it is a contractual conversation in order for you to be able to lock that up. The numbers, the statistics, Karen, that you asked about, it is hard to measure idea theft because, how do you measure ideas not implemented, for example? But broadly, here are some stats to get you going. Firstly, virtually anybody you talk to has a story to tell about an idea being stolen. Second, the three losses you face: loss of revenue when somebody takes your idea, the extra development costs that you face in order to now try to build out your existing idea to differentiate it from the copycat. And the third is loss of margin, because now there's a competing product in the market and you're going to have to lower your price. So that's what we're looking to ensure, that you do not suffer that loss of margin, that you do not suffer that extra costs, that you do not suffer the lost revenue, simply by taking greater care about how you communicate your ideas to the recipient.
So with, say you have sort of a pitch mark agreement in place, but the business goes ahead and does what it wants to do and doesn't honor that, what can they do? What can you do as the owner for somebody who's got pitch mark in their pocket?
Yes. Well, this is precisely why having a contractual conversation is so much more important. So traditionally, you would have gone along to your presentation, to your investors, to your customers, you would have shown your PowerPoint slides, and everybody's keeping mum about intellectual property. You don't say anything because you don't want to turn the customer off. The customer doesn't want to say anything because they might actually harbor designs to quietly take your ideas and implement it themselves cheaper. Now with a pitch mark, the conversation changes. You demonstrate, you show your pitch mark certificate during your presentation materials. You're doing it very subtly. You're simply saying, I take care about my IP. Here is the certificate that shows that I have a pitch mark on it, and it is indelibly registered on the blockchain. Now you give your customer a choice even. It's not just take it or leave it, but you can say, I want you to buy this idea, and I want you to engage us to execute on it. And it'll only cost you $500,000. Of course, I want you to say yes, and when you do, I will license this idea to you. I can do that right here, right now, on the laptop, without getting lawyers involved. But you've now also given them a choice. Now you can say, If you want to hire somebody else to execute on my architectural drawing, to execute on my graphic design, to execute on the article that I've written for your publication, whatever the idea is that you've pitch marked, I'm going to give you a cheaper choice. I'm going to license the idea to you. And instead of $500,000 to execute, I'm just going to charge you $25,000. And once again, I can license that idea to you today. And if you can think that you can find somebody cheaper to execute, be my guest. As the vendor, of course, you want to get the $500,000 contract. But when you pitch the idea, and you now have a choice between having your idea ripped off and $500,000, or getting $25,000 for the idea, which one would you pick? You'd much rather have a bird in the hand, none of the execution risk, none of the execution costs, none of the execution efforts, and you still get paid for the idea. So that is in essence how you then monetize your ideas, by transferring or licensing the tokenization of your idea to the recipient.
There's a certain amount of personal investment, that you believe in something, you want to do it, you want to project it, and you want to put it out there. When it comes to launching a product, is that kind of personal investment in the eventual product a good or a bad thing? Because I ask this because sometimes you can be too invested in it that you don't take a perspective that is neutral, or which takes into consideration what the public wants. Is your product needed or not? So for all of you, how did you get around that issue of being maybe too emotionally and personally invested in what you wanted to do with your product?
What we learned quite early on is to never fall in love with your work. And
Good point.
I'm sure a lot of creatives probably have heard that before, especially if you've gone into pretty long educational route in architecture. So, and it's very true, because we've had to re-innovate Kaera. I think it was around 2019. Kaera is actually already ready for the market, but when you work with people on the ground, the contractors that are actually installing materials, for example, you realize that they're the ones that don't actually want to have any resistance whatsoever, right? So yes, you may have a great product, but how easy is it for the people that are buying and installing your product? That took us about 4 years to solve. So now we have very little resistance from contractors and manufacturers that are installing our product. And we really had to pay attention. I think if we were stubborn about it, and because we're too passionate about it and we wanted it our way, that means that we want the industry to actually adapt to our material. But how much longer would that take? So we redesigned Kaera to actually adapt to the existing manufacturing and construction workflows that are already in place. Contractors don't need to buy new tools. They can install, they can mix Kaera, they can cast it in place on site, or prefab panels installed very easily.
How much time and effort and money did that take to make it relevant to the existing workflows?
We were commercialized in 2023. It took us 4 years. Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of cost, probably close to about 800K.
Now it's worked in, and it's part of a system that you're introducing. What will it take to get others the existing players who you're trying to reach out to? What will it take to get them to use Kaera versus existing methodologies that they've been applying?
Well, I think the regulations help quite a lot. You know, in 2010, when I was talking about this, there were no regulations in place. People were already focused on operational energy savings. If you're from the industry, you probably would have heard about this, the CO2 coming from, the light bulbs that weren't efficient enough, or passive design strategies that reduce air conditioning and orientation and all that, which is very important. But having said that, it's very important to also understand the other side as well, where the materials themselves are actually part of that cause, right? Part of the issue. So when it comes down to actually implementing Kaera into a project versus traditional materials, people are not looking just at the unit cost. They're looking at the entire system of the building. So when we are talking to developers, the tier one companies that we're working with now, they are looking at it from a total system perspective because they're paying for the entire building. And if Kaira's 30 to 40% lighter than traditional materials, that's a huge reduction on foundations, on the structural system itself of that entire building, of transportation. What about the people that are installing it? Labor? How much more labor do you need if something weighs 40% more? To us, that's what we have been discussing, and that's what gets buy-in. And of course, like I said, there's always that intangible and tangible aspect where Kaira is actually quite beautiful. We get immediate buy-in once they actually feel in touch and see Kaira.
It's always good to get your product out there as well, right? So,
Yeah.
Chenwei, for you, same question in terms of whether that personal commitment was a boon or bane.
There are actually two angles in which I can approach this from. And it's a fascinating question because I've been in music for a good part of 20 years. A lot of times, at every stage or every different phase of the business, there's always been some critical failure, which usually I didn't contribute to, or at least I like to think I did not contribute to. And the question always comes back, right? Do you keep going? Am I doing this just for the sake of fulfilling my own ego or whatever, right? Or is this something truly you're called to do? And personally, I speak for myself. At every stage when it feels as though it's the end of the road, um, something else happens, another opportunity opens, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is meant to carry on. And that's really how I am where I am today, where what you see in terms of what we have launched this year at CES, all the 15, 16 awards we got, as really a culmination of 4 different failures I've experienced over the past 20 years. And being able to take that, learn from it, take a step back and say, okay, what made sense? What did not make sense? And don't cling on too tightly to both what you think contributed to your success and what you think contributed to your failure. Because the context is always different at every stage. And just say, okay, based on what we know now, based on what we want to achieve now, let's try not to repeat the mistakes we made before, and let's just do a bit better this time. So we were very fortunate. In fact, I can tell you our success at CES this year was also, in a way, somewhat failure related in the sense that we had a lot of lead up to the CES event itself, where there was just too much happening in the background, which didn't allow for us to, say, take a booth. So in the end, we said, okay, well, we can't, taking a booth doesn't make sense at this point in time anymore. All the good spaces are gone. So what we ended up doing was to take up a suite at the Bellagio and just arrange PR interviews back to back for 3 days. And the surprising thing was that we actually had enough interviews to line up to be occupied for those 3 days. Interacting with the media, I find that being personable, being sharing the journey really, and the story behind the products, my personal journey and how we got here and why the products are the way they are, really connected in a way which I think carried through and how the journalists then wrote about our products. You don't want to drink too much of a Kool-Aid. On the other, you certainly have to bring with you a certain amount of who you are and to what you're doing and what you've built.
Okay. And that proved to be cheaper than getting a booth at CES?
I would say a million times more effective because what we achieved there is pretty phenomenal. It's for a first time, going there and just having three different products and having all products win awards is pretty phenomenal.
Fantastic. Mark, how about yourself? I know you launched and then you've tweaked it and so on and so forth. How sort of personally invested were you in PitchMark before you presented it?
It is an ongoing calibration that you're doing. Because to say, well, I'll just walk away from the idea if it doesn't work first time, you might end too early. Or to say, no, I'm going to carry on no matter what, well, yeah, maybe there is a point at which you should have pulled the plug. And knowing which side to fall on is really the art of being an entrepreneur. And that's exactly also the sorts of conversations that we have with people. Half the time when you're launching a new product, you don't know yet where it's going to go. But we also learned from the research that actually that is when idea theft is most prevalent. So you're not yet sure, do I push forward, do I invest, as some people do, mortgage their houses, in order to make sure that I can finance my idea, do I hold back? Often it's at that point that people don't really think about IP rights when they really should. As an entrepreneur, different people will have different approaches. It really is very much personality dependent on, firstly, whether you do have that follow through, whether you do have all those new ideas. It's a little bit like being on a moving train. Your question in essence is, at what point do you stop and get off at the station? But that's not usually how entrepreneurs think. Because as you said, Cho-Wei, right? You're going down the track and yeah, this looks like a bit of a dead end track, but there's always a junction that I can move across to. There's a different way that I can proceed. So in short, Karen, it's really about firstly getting on the train. And once you're on it, then you soon see that you have to calibrate which track should I be on so that you actually never end up at a dead end track. And that way, hopefully your train will gather pace and you'll be in it for the long haul.
True. Also, one of the things to contend with in the current age is the variety of options open to us. I mean, in the past, you had a product, your newspapers may have picked it up, TV station might pick it up, but now you've got this whole variety of things, avenues to approach. You've got social media, you've got influencers, KOLs, whatnot. Now, how do you choose which route to take when you do want to market your product or get it out there to launch your product? What's the strategy you apply in making that decision?
Of course, Karen, you and I come from an era where there were just 3 tracks, print, radio, television. And meantime, you could be on any number of tracks all along the line. The same calibration process applies. Often people start at the wrong end. They think about what is the content I want to produce, and then what does the script look like, and what should the final video look like, assuming that's what you end up producing. And then we'll put it up on some channels, and hopefully somebody will see it, and hopefully somebody will then finance this whole production effort by actually buying the product. Your starting point should be at the end. How am I going to make money from producing this marketing content? Who is going to pay me that money? What channels do they watch? What content works best on those channels? So you pretty much then reverse engineer the whole process to the content that you want to produce, starting with the end in mind. To some extent, I know, for you and I coming from the traditional media, it's uncomfortable when there is so much competition for eyeballs and ears. But in truth, isn't that what advertisers have wanted for 100 years? Targeting, getting their message out to the right recipient. Really, the fragmentation of the media now provides that opportunity to you. What matters, therefore, is not, how do I make sense of it, but how do I make a strategic decision to ensure that I'm choosing the right channel?
I have a interesting challenge for my products in the sense that we built them to be feature rich in the way they can speak to many different communities in many different ways. So very much like what Mark has just shared, the idea is for us to start at that level where we question ourselves, right? What does it mean for this product to live with, for example, a tour guide? Just throwing it out there, right? If you've ever been on a tour, generally the sound system on the bus is terrible. No one's really paying attention, and they've got this really dinky PA that they hang on their neck and doesn't sound great, right? So if they carry around one of our little speakers, now they've got a full sound solution that they can blast on the bus and also use it as a PA at the same time. And then we say, okay, great. So now we've got an idea. This is what the market might look like. This is a very fascinating use case because you would never expect any other brand to say, oh, we want to target tour operators or tour guides. And then you say, okay, let's create something there. Maybe this might be interesting and open up a completely new segment for us in terms of the market, right? The market group. At the same time, because it's so off tangent, it also then captures the other attention of other people where we can then feed off that. So musicians to me that's a foregone conclusion. Yes, of course, we want musicians to also use these products to jam and play and create content. But how about everyone else? I'm a dad, so I've got my three kids all play sports competitively, and I love to rock up at their games with my speakers blasting music, and then when they need to gather, you can again use it as a mini PA. We have a lot of avenues in which we can promote and market our product. It's a question of how do you then blend all these different story arcs into one underlying theme, right? Basically, how Fender is not just a guitar brand anymore, but it's a music lifestyle brand which sits in that crossing point of people who not only just listen to music but live in it too.
Could I ask each of you to give me sort of like one lesson you learned from the various things that you've done in life about launching a product or a service? One key lesson that you learned and carry with you all the time.
Yeah, for me, I think it's really getting a solid team in place, because launching a product is actually quite complex. There's so many different experts that need to be involved, and I don't think that, well, for us anyway, we could do it alone, because the issues are so complicated and so complex in so many different industries. I love my team and I'm so grateful for having them with us.
I guess I can concur with Cody what he said. You need a team because more often than not, what you see, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as an inventor or someone who's trying to lead the charge, is hyper focused, and you tend not to see the peripherals and to take into account what might be happening around you. So definitely having more eyeballs is better than not. Yeah, and I guess the only other thing would be don't grasp too hard on things, right? Because sometimes the tighter you hold something, the more you end up strangling it. You need to kind of go with the flow sometimes.
I would say think big from day one. Because thinking that you're going to launch a company with a product and, I just want to substitute my existing corporate salary. I just want to have a small business. I don't need to be rich. I just want the product to do well enough to pay my existing lifestyle is really putting yourself at a disservice. Thinking big and acting big from day one means that you make better decisions from a governance perspective. It means that you make better decisions from a hiring perspective. It means you make better decisions from an intellectual property perspective. It'll make better decisions from a marketing perspective. If you think that you're going to start kind of just in a small way, I'll just get some kakis, I'll just hire them, fairly informal. If your business really is successful, then tightening up the formalization of employment contracts is going to be much harder. Similarly, if you market with a small business mindset, then are you ever really going to get to that big mindset? Think big from day one. And of course, same with IP. If you don't take your intellectual property seriously, you can't expect your prospective customers, investors, and partners to do so. So once again, you would want to act like you mean it. Be that big company that you want to grow into from the time that you first launched your first product.
Think big, act big, have a good team, have a great story to tell. I think that's also kind of key to the whole process of trying to launch a product. Of course, having a good product is the basic element to this. But I suppose protecting what you've got is very important. And so there are many factors here, many interesting insights from the panelists, Chen Wei Ma of Fender Audio, Mark Laudy of Pitchmark, and Dr. Cody Kato of ODE. Thanks so much for your inputs, and thanks for sort of helping us get a better understanding of what we need to put into place as we go out and develop something for the world to enjoy.